We have worked with yourselves, it feels like for a number of years, and I don't know if that's just um, a made up thing in my mind, but I think Happy Days has been at least banded around my organization for a couple of years.
Yes, certainly we've been working on a couple of development projects together. So it's part of a team. I tend to be the tenant representative on these and projects. So we come across you quite a few times.
Yeah. And I think you were introduced to us via, was it Dealey Freed?
It was, yeah, Max Freed
Max,
and his
okay.
team. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so we've successfully opened that nursery, and it's been running very nicely.
Yeah, that's good. How long have you been at Happy Days?
Just over 10 years now. Yeah, so I had a few years 8 years at Tesco prior to that. So
Yeah,
a very
yeah.
different environment, but very rewarding in the sense that you can see the results in terms of the children and how they respond to the education we're giving them.
Nice.
So
And what is it what's your role? What does it entail?
my role title is development director, but tend to deal with most things relating to property. Now that's so we've been growing now for over 10 years. So that's my responsibility in terms of the growth of certainly we term organic nurseries, so new builds
Yeah.
and full fit outs. And then I also support the acquisitions as well as all the landlord and tenant interactions and sustainability lead within the business. So quite a varied role.
And properties, how many properties do you have?
We've now got 37. We've got 36 nurseries, but one of those has got 2 separate properties. So
Okay.
so it keeps me on my toes.
And your biggest stress, what is it that keeps you up at night?
It's making sure the buildings are safe, I think.
So safety is the first thing.
The safety's got to be a priority within our sector. I mean, I think safeguarding and safety of the building trumps everything within a nursery. We are looking after the most precious sort of item that most people have. So it's a real responsibility. So we've got a huge amount of compliance that we get through within the business, and that ranges from Ofsted to health and safety, to a whole range of safety measures, and what I've come across since coming across from a corporate environment to a nursery environment is actually doing it not to tick a box, but you genuinely want to make sure that you've got to you can go to sleep at night.
So you have noticed a difference then from how you talking about sustainability here, or are you talking about with reference to safety, that there's been a shift from a large corporate into a more medium-sized organization?
Personal responsibility.
Right.
I think we got a corporate responsibility. We've got a responsibility as directors of the business, but actually personally, that is absolutely where we're coming from. And I think that definitely runs straight through the sustainability agenda that we have. It's not about ticking the ESG box. It's about actually making a difference, because we've got a really unique position.
What is it that you love about your role?
It's seeing the growth of the business whilst seeing the actually going in to see into the nurseries and seeing the staff and the children interacting, and seeing the engagement within the buildings that I've been involved in, or I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
So,
and when it comes to designing the buildings, and when you're working through how to actually pull the layout of the building and deciding what's important and what's not important, what process do you go through? How do you get to a point where you are comfortable with everything, thinking and believing and knowing that that is going to deliver the experience that you want for your clients or for the children?
I think first of all, it's location. I mean, it starts very much based on where it is.
Yeah.
Can people get there through all modes of transport? So, we always look at whether we can get there through public transport,
Mm.
and pedestrian routes and cycle routes. Now, with children, not all of that is always used, but it's really important from our perspective for staff to make sure we can get people in and out of the building, not rely on the car. So that's a first point in terms of where we're looking. But in terms of the design of the building, we've got very specific ideas around how we want to operate that nursery, both in terms of the rooms where the children are based, but also in terms of the interaction of the various other rooms. So where the manager sits, are they close enough to all the rooms? Can they react? How do we service those rooms? How do we heat them? How do we cool them? But I think it is some really basic at a really basic level, and what I've learned since, if you like, being in a nursery business, is I think we as property professionals tend to look at a building in terms of on a plan and spec, whereas you watch a nursery operator, somebody who's in there every day with the children, they really work with their hands. So, is this a sharp corner? Are there splinters out of this on this fence? So it really is a very different level of consideration, and I think we always say to our maintenance team when they start, the priorities for you and me may be very different from those from the nursery. So, if there's a problem with a latch on a gate or a lock, that is a significant issue. If the heating is not working in the winter, or the cooling is not working in the summer, it's a significant impact on the children, and it can get to the point we can't operate. So it really is that direct interaction and responsibility. We will not we've got to make sure that experience is safe and enjoyable for the children and the staff, so that the education can carry on. Because it's not, we're not babysitting. We're educating. So that environment is really important.
It's an interesting point that you're making there, that you're not a babysitter, you're an educator. And I'm thinking that in this education piece, you're going to have times where the children are going to need to be outside. Doors are going to need to be open because there's other good children that are going to need to be inside, and you need that person, that adult, to be able to go from the inside to the outside quite freely. And then when that comes to the practicalities of heating or cooling that space, when you've got the outdoor temperature being different to the desired indoor temperature, how do you go about deciding how to do that when it comes to things like sustainability and so on?
It's a huge and ongoing consideration. We do like, and certainly from an operation and educational point of view, we do like free flow. So children can go in and out, and they can explore, and they can wander out into the garden and play there, or come back in, obviously supervised. But from a maintenance, property, sustainability perspective, that is a real difficulty. So obviously we look to ask the doors, if not going outside, let's shut the door. But you're relying on the team to do that. We support that. We have supported it in the past just to mitigate the heat loss via kind of refrigerator curtains. So basically a barrier that is not sufficient to stop a child or a member of staff getting through, but really helps to mitigate the loss of heat or cooling. And we're now moving into looking to trial later this year a BMS system where we can actually go a little bit slightly more technical around it all, and shut off heating and cooling when the door opens, so that we can just do something to reduce that impact. Because and that is genuinely for the heating bills can be high. We've moved away from gas, which was a conscious decision, mainly because we were having to put so much cooling into most of these nurseries that there's no point in having a gas heating system and then a full cooling in each room. Let's get a heating cooling system. So we've gone down that route, but obviously that was pretty sensitive to the windows, and that's an educational piece as well at the moment. So
as in training the team how to use that system.
Yes, shut the door basically if you can. But also don't put the air conditioning up to 100, to maximum, because it won't get any cooler or hotter any quicker. And all you're doing is heating the outside. So there is, again, we're looking at potentially a greater control of the individual room systems, so that we can manage that a little bit better.
I've noticed over the years that property is developed in order for it to meet financial goals more than it's developed in order to meet comfort or outcomes for the people that are using the property. So the reason I kind of give that as an example in the nursery is because you have education, which is your primary reason for having the place open. It's not a child care center. It's not a holding pen that you're creating, right?
Yeah.
So in order for the young people to be educated and to develop and to learn, they do need to make choices and have a certain amount of freedom to make choices. Do I go inside? Do I go outside? Or maybe these choices are made from an adult, that you're going outside to get something, to bring it back in to do something inside. And so that facility is needed, but that goes against the way of running a tight, efficient building.
Yeah.
Because you want to keep that envelope closed and keep it closed for as long as possible.
Absolutely. As a property professional, you understand that you don't open the door on air conditioning. However, as I said earlier,
but property's not for making money. It's really for the children to be educated. That's the whole reason for that property.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a commercial business, so let's not. So education is our business, which is perhaps I shouldn't say, but it is. But as part of that, you've got to be able to provide a quality education, a quality. It's care and education. So you want to make sure that the children have the opportunity to use their own mind and their own natural inquisitiveness to actually do what they want to do, and that's our part of our educational policy. Doesn't always go with the property side, but as I said earlier on, it's childcare and safeguarding, and those are two premier items that we must achieve. And it may make us weep every so often when we realise the door's been opened, but we're looking at various ways of mitigating it, and I think it's going to be a consistent conundrum. I won't say battle.
Challenge.
So
as all of the years that you've spent within property, with maintenance, with developing, what would you say that the contractors that you've worked with over the years, in the main, struggle to really understand or really appreciate, that you think, actually, if anyone's listening that's in this area, if you could just appreciate and understand this, then for clients like me, it would just enable some really good things to happen?
Probably the single point is height of children, and the point at which they're looking at things and bumping into things. So, for instance, a low window, a windowsill at around head height, is awful, because actually if there's a pointed corner on the end of a windowsill maybe next to a door, that's got clashes all over it. So you're constantly coming across, particularly during snagging. Can we sort of corner that off, or can we put some kind of protection on that? So I think that there's that side. What else would be a frustration? I think it is design. It's silly bits of design, I think, is probably where we get the most frustration. And it's around that type of thing. When we had a string course outside one of our nurseries, and
A string course.
So basically, one of the outside walls into the garden. Yeah, one of the features that was insisted upon was flat wall, course a little bit for a course of bricks jutting out and then back. So there's literally a sort of feature brick. And of course, at what level was that?
Head height.
It was a toddler's head height. We couldn't get that out of the design. And now we've had to design, basically create a blackboard type of wall. That was across the front of it, to avoid a safeguarding issue. And it's at levels. I think that's the other one, difference in levels. And we're very particular around transitions between different flooring, because just don't notice, a transition strip straight over. So it's always those type of bits and pieces. From a sustainability point of view, I think it's we have had very interesting conversations around sort of pre-em requirements in the past. A classic was there was an insistence on having a bench in the garden. It had to be in the garden, couldn't be out the front, for the staff to be able to sit and use. And we had a considerable discussion around this, because actually the last place the member of staff, for their well-being, would be in the children's garden. That's just not, we wanted to have it at the front, and there was there's very, it's that sort of on the ground operator's eye view of what we see as just a problem, whereas from a pre-em perspective, we need a bench, and we want to put it in the garden, and and as you have a garden, that's where we go, because that's where the staff will want to sit on a nice day, whereas that's exactly where they won't want to sit on a nice day. So it's just an example, but it gives a bit of a view. Sometimes you can get frustrated with that type of thing, but it is what it is. We've dealt with it.
That's interesting. So the bench needed to be in the garden. Was it for the staff to have a break? Is that
absolutely?
Oh, right, okay.
So staff welfare is important to
Yeah.
every business, I hope. So we have a staff room, and we allow them that. But obviously, if we had the opportunity to put in that bench, it would probably be out the front, because actually that's the quietest place for them to go. Because what are you having a break from? It's a hard job, and they do decent 8 or 10 hour shifts. So to have that half an hour outside, it will be well away. So I think it's I think it's important from our perspective around that sort of thing. So it's just an example, but it's just how we see things compared to how the legislation or the authorities may have wanted to see. So
and what things have you found that's worked really well with either the contractors that you've worked with architects? What types of things do you value when working with teams?
I think the best teams we've worked with have addressed the the requirements of the build and planning and sustainability with listen to what we've said. So for instance, we'll have we've B bricks and and insect houses and all and so on. But actually, rather than putting them on the wrong side, the other side of the building where the children can't see, we'll have them on our side, on the children's side. So because it's absolutely part of an education, that's the type of thing we'll do. So we'll work with them from there. But I think it's really just understanding how we lay out the garden. Just using some of the planting. So planters, putting garden to areas we can plant vegetables, because as part of our curriculum, that is very much understanding where food comes from is part of our commitment through the eco schools and through our own efforts for the children. So it's saying, okay, this doesn't necessarily work, if you like it, as normal, but we're going to change this around, and we're going to have sort of different design features. So from that perspective, I think we have worked at how we control buildings, and for instance, last person out switch is really quite important in our, where you can see the difference in those that have and those that haven't got them. And it's always a bit of a, do you need those? We've got PIRs, we've got this and that and the other. And well, no, because we do not want lights on all night, because it does make a difference. People, whatever you do, lights will be off. So we are quite particular in terms of some of those type of features, making sure that we've got a way of controlling. And it sounds like a very controlling attitude, but I think we give the staff every credit, but equally, it's there's always going to be some wastage there.
Yes. So talk me through how that works. Is it a routine that someone needs to go through to make sure that everything is switched off, or is it push one switch and everything shuts down?
So basically, at the end of the night, so it's outside of the front, just in the entrance lobby. We'll walk out through there, and then turn the. We've got a key. Turn the last person out switch off. So basically, everything that's not necessary is not working overnight.
It automatically, by turning that key, shuts everything off.
Absolutely. So from our perspective, clearly that's from an energy perspective, that's really good news. But it's also it's a very clear and obvious routine that can be managed and addressed quite easily.
And it's a signal as well, isn't it? For that last person that's out to say, I am done. I have fulfilled every responsibility given to me of this day, and I'm checking out.
Yeah, and again, that's important. So and it's important to us because we're open 12, 13 hours a day. Maybe not that long, but with cleaning as well around that sort of time. But that leaves virtually half the day where rogue equipment that can be switched off is it's not everything, and so that's, from a design point of view, that's quite important. With our fit out contractors, that's been really, it's really noticeable. Where we haven't got it, we're looking to put it in. It's much harder to retrofit that type of thing than starting from scratch and doing originally.
What are your plans now moving forward in terms of build or refurb schedule? It sounds like Happy Days have acquired a few other businesses as well, so you've got quite a mix there of property, haven't you? Is there anything that you're able to talk of with reference to plans moving forward?
Yeah, we are heading towards a practical completion of a new nursery, so from scratch.
Where is that?
That's in Borley Park, which is just north of Southampton, Hedge End. So that is due for completion at the end of November. So that is exciting, and and that will open in January. So again, we'll be sort of setting that up between November, end of November, and the new year, ready for children in January, if all goes well. I think it has been going well so far, so we can't, but you never assume. So from that perspective, we're now the fit out element of that is going on at the moment. So, we're working well with a developer, and yeah, and I think going back to the contractor occupier relationship, there's we've worked with them before, and there's an awful lot of questioning. So, does this work? We're gonna have this retaining wall at the back, which is a very functional item. How are we going to finish it? Is it going to be a rough brick? Oh no, we don't want rough bricks because children can fall into those. Is it going to be something that So various items along the line we've dealt with. We've got a forest school area that we've agreed. There was a landscaping strip that was a level of landscaping that was required, and we've agreed with combination of the developer and the local authority to use that as a forest school. So it's a less formal play, where there's no trees growing, and so that's slightly less less of a formula than the more surfaced and sort of set play areas. So again, that's developed during the design process and during the planning process, actually. So that it's getting involved. I think that's the key. It's getting involved with the process, not walking away and saying, okay, we signed contracts on this, we'll come back at PC and everything will be fine. Because there's always a question around education, what works best, and the best contractors and the best developers we work with will listen to what you're saying and nuance things so that we're actually achieving the same property performance, but we're actually sort of doing it through a prism of an educator.
What process do you go through, and what would you say that your kind of main criteria is for deciding who to work with? I'm just thinking this now as, lots of organizations that are out there are within that small to medium enterprise bracket. And I know of developments that I've done personally. When you do the first one, it feels as though your process is as best as it can be because you've never gone through the process before. And so I look around and say, right, who else has been through this process that I can get some advice from? And I'm not sure that there's that much around, really. So I'm not saying give away company secrets necessarily, unless you're comfortable doing that. But I'm just wondering, for those people that are listening, what advice can you give of things that you have found really, really good methods and ways to ensure that the people that you're choosing are actually the people that you want to work with?
Well, beyond the kind of research you do in terms of financial strength and past track record, I think one of the key things is looking at businesses of a similar size. So so you're dealing with people that kind of understand the size of the business, as well as the operation, and because you tend to get a greater connection there. We've worked with we have had Shell, the Shell developer, the contractor of a Shell, being some of the sort of big guys, and it's just you just don't get any interaction. You're just not on the same page. So the best people we've worked with have been businesses of a similar size, structure, so that we interact best. So that I think that is really important. That we've seen the difference. I think it's addressing your point about everything's new on a it is, but every time there's a learning on every project, and I think that's you can improve, you can learn when things don't go quite as well, and so I think the consistency is important. We've worked with a fit out contractor, pretty much throughout, that really understands the business, and like a tenant side project team really understands. So architects, project managers, so that we can we can see the problems coming before they hit, both through the design as well as later on. So yeah, I think it's finding a level, but then also understanding who you're dealing with within that business. Are you going to be dealing with the MD? Are you going to be dealing with who within there? So as early as possible, you can start getting a rapport, an understanding where they're coming from and what their pressures are as well, so that we can work together to get the best result. And if you know somebody well enough and you spend the time, you can have those conversations during it, saying, "Well, I don't think that quite works," without too many changes to variations in the contract. So,
so you mentioned that you worked for Tesco, and I'm just wondering the career path that you've taken to get to this point at the moment. How did you get here?
Right, yeah. Well, I'm a chartered surveyor, so I worked in the various southwest property consultancies in and around Bristol from 1988, and left there 2004 to go into a development company. Sadly, no longer going. But from there, went to Tesco, and that was less on the construction side. So this is about acquisition and planning and design of buildings and delivery of new stores. When the tide, if you like, of development started slowing down for all the supermarkets and generally across the board in the sort of 13, 14, you looked around and thought, actually, I'd like to look at something a bit more fulfilling. And I think probably most, of my colleagues and the people that, what on earth are you doing? You're going to work for a nursery operator. At the time we had, I think, 15, 16 settings, and we've now got 36, 37 on the way. But you're busy, and I think, and there's a purpose, where purpose is to grow and then deliver that quality, that education. So I think it's been a real change in the last 10 years doing this. But it's actually pulling together all the experiences I've had on those various different roles in the past, and bringing it forward to something that's actually producing a difference, and you can see the difference.
Yeah, I get that sense from you that what you're experiencing is purpose in what you're doing. You're seeing the outcome of your efforts in a different way than what you've done and what you've had in previous roles.
Yeah. I mean, you can be proud of any role, can't you? And then when you're in there, you can be pleased with the number of stores you've opened. Yeah, you can be pleased with, the sale of a building or whatever it might be. But I think maybe it's age, or maybe it's the fact that you mature or change perspective over a period of time. And I do like the fact that we're moving together with a purpose for really, something that's really important. Early years is such an important area. The development of children's minds happens in those first years. And so going back to that babysitting point, it's not babysitting, it's really helping them get on their way and getting them ready for school. Because school is such a change. So, that is important to me. And I think the other thing that, I think is important from our perspective, and I think, is we're quite uniquely placed.
How so?
Well, I think, we've got, particularly around sustainability, from a sustainability ESG point of view, we are, we're responsible for buildings, but we're also educating children. So we've got a curriculum that involves, sustainability. We run in the Eco Schools project, so there is a drive from that side. So everything we're doing, actually, you can do everything for staff and for energy saving, for waste, but actually at the same time you've got this educational element, and by our actions you can make a difference to people's perspectives without brainwashing. And this is, if members of staff and the teams and the rooms are recycling, that's a strong message to get across. So we are, we from an ESG point of view, we are in the community. We do interact with the community. So, for instance, intergenerational play. We'll go and interact with a local care home, and the children and the residents of the care home are in there doing various activities that both get huge benefit out of. So we are able to actually bring some of those softer skills to our sustainability. But we do have to have the rigor to make sure that we're doing everything else.
Well, Kevin, I know that our team actually loves working with you, with Happy Days Nurseries. They absolutely do that, and I'm grateful for your perspective, for coming on and talking about your role, your passion. As a father of 4 children, all my children are kind of grown up now, but I know how important those early years are, and just commend your attitude and your perspective when it comes to creating these spaces where young people can learn and develop in those early years. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for watching to the end. I think that you'll like this, but before you do that, just make sure that you've commented and liked below, and also that you subscribed.